Stardate 43446784932178634.
Welcome to Two Old Geeks Talking. I'm Rob.
I'm Trace.
And today we are doing Star Trek Part 2.
That's right. And we're going to talk about the Next Generation, Voyager, DS9, Enterprise, and the other Star Trek movies, as well as Discovery and Picard. We're going to try to do it within 20 minutes, so let's get started.
All right.
Okay. All right, so what's your thoughts on Next Generation versus the original series?
I liked it because you could see the progression and how things have advanced, but you still had a tip of a hat to the originals.
Yeah. I mean, it was really frowned upon when they said they were going to do more Star Trek, and it was different than the first. And there was a lot of criticism, even from the fans. If you can't tell, as I do my Picard maneuver, I'm a fan of Next Generation. I can remember watching it when I was a teenager on a little black and white television that was in my room. And yeah, they had color TV back then. I just didn't have one. And so I was a huge fan of it, and I liked it from the very, very beginning. And it was interesting because, you know, Denise Crosby character got killed off fairly fast. She played Tasha Yar.
Oh, yeah, right.
And even though we're accustomed to that now with Game of Thrones and shows like that kill off main characters, that really hadn't been done. Now, Denise wanted to leave the show after the first season, so they killed her character off. But what it did actually help the show, because what that did was when somebody was in peril, you thought something might actually happen to them, because she was the main character. When she got killed off, you're thinking, wow, if they kill her off, they may kill anybody off.
Right.
And another thing, the thumbnail for this video is actually from left to right. It's myself, my brother Matthew, my father Mars, and Rob. And when internet first come out and Photoshop first come out, there was a guy that you could send him pictures and he would Photoshop you on a Klingon ship and with Klingon uniforms and stuff. So he done that for me. I actually had him framed and given to him for Christmas one year. And yeah, so you get geeky presents from me even if you're not a geek. And Matthew and Dad's probably tossed his, and we still have mine.
I've still got mine.
So what'd you think about Next Generation?
I liked it. Now, there was things that had progressed about it, like the looks of the Klingon. You're talking about Klingons.
Yeah.
Now, they progressed the looks of the Klingons and kind of brought up some questions and things like that, but they did fairly well answering, things like that. Now, I liked that the fact, kind of like what we talked about in our last episode, how there was a diversity of characters. You had an android, a Klingon, you had different cultures on the bridge itself.
Yeah,
what was the counselor? She's
Betazoid.
Okay.
Betazoid. So they introduced some new alien races. Klingons who were enemies weren't. So they were the story was progressive and moving forward. And so you had Data, who's kind of like the Spock character, kind of the Tin Man who didn't have a heart. And but as far as Picard's, they didn't try to redo the original series. I mean, Picard was certainly a different captain than
Right.
Captain Kirk was. Captain Kirk was either fight him or seduce him. And Picard, he was a diplomat. He was an older captain. It's funny because when he tried out for the series, they tried him with a toupee, and Roddenberry didn't want him to have a toupee because he was like, in the future, nobody cares if you're bald, which is great for me.
I think in the future they would have been able to eradicate baldness.
You would think so, but it I guess maybe it wasn't on their list. Even Geordi, who wore like a visor, they had fixed blindness, but he wouldn't be able to see the way he was accustomed to seeing his entire life, and he didn't want to go to just one level because he could see in heat vision and not only infrared but and dark, and so he wanted to keep the vision he wanted. So it was an interesting show. I love it. Ran 7 seasons, and I'm a big fan of Next Generation, and it's probably my favorite Star Trek. DS9 is considered the best Star Trek, but for me it was Next Generation. My favorite episode in Next Generation was The Inner Light. That's when where Picard gets zapped by a probe and he goes back in time and he lives an entire lifetime, like in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And you know, if you watch that and you don't get the feels at the end of it, you know, if it don't kind of touch your heart a little bit, then yeah, there's
the best thing they did about that series is Patrick Stewart. They took a well classical trained thespian and put him in a sci-fi situation. I mean, he upped the scale of acting.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
most definitely.
I'm getting ready to do emergency saucer separation. But the cast, they said if they ever wrote a tell-all book, I've had the opportunity to meet Brent Spiner, Maria Sirtis, Gates McFadden, the girls played Beta and Larsa, and some of the other side characters. And I've ran into and seen from a distance, plays number 1. I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, Jonathan Frakes. And so they said if they ever wrote a tell-all book, it would be horrible because they just got along and joked and had a good time the entire 7 seasons. There was never any conflict. Unlike the original series where a lot of people felt like Shatner was getting too much attention, and you had kind of Shatner and Leonard McCoy over here, or Leonard Nimoy over here, and the rest of the cast over here. That wasn't the case with Next Generation. I think it ended well. An ending is more important than a beginning. Next Generation, the first season was a little rough, and it took a while for everybody to learn their characters, but it ended with all good things. It tied everything up. That was something that a lot of shows like Game of Thrones, which we'll talk about at some point, didn't do. But the ending is so important, and they really wrapped up Next Generation well. And then from Next Generation, we have DS9. Did you watch any of those?
I watched them all twice. Oh, loved Cisco, loved all of them. Yeah, I think that's what I enjoyed most is because they took the Star Trek universe to a different era, not area, but a different area. It just wasn't a ship going from planet to planet or meeting race after race. It was, hey, I'm here. This is why I'm here, because he basically is a casualty from the Borg.
Yeah.
And because of Picard and all that stuff. And you got to see Starfleet and another part of somebody's life outside of, you know, the cast of the Next Generation.
Yeah, it was a brave move.
But then they brought Worf back on there.
Yeah, I love Worf. My favorite character in Next Generation is Michael Dorn's Worf. And so when they brought him on DS9, I like that too. Now, you had the starship in the original series and Next Generation, so just having it on a stationary space station, you know, was a big risk. And but having like a central point where people were coming and going, and the writing was just off the scale. I mean, almost every episode of DS9 is great. My favorite episode of DS9 is The Visitor, and Cisco gets hit by a probe. Apparently that's like a thing. Everybody gets hit by a probe. But he's phasing in and out of time. And so he sees his son grow old. He sees his son as a boy, missing him, and he sees him as a little older, in his 20s. He sees him where he's fell in love, and his son this whole time has devoted his life to trying to get his father back, right, and keep him from skipping through time. And so he ends up distancing himself from his wife and his career and his writing passion, and to just do anything he can to get his father back. And The Visitor is another one where if you watch it, you'll feel something at the end. Yeah, you're dead inside. So from DS9, you know, we had a home run with Next Generation, had a home run with DS9. We go into Voyager. And what's your thoughts on Voyager?
I didn't get to watch a lot of Voyager. I watched some Voyager. That's Captain Janeway, right? I watched some of Voyager, but not that much. I remember. I'm trying to remember what was the cook's name
On Voyager, Neelix?
Yeah, that's the character I remember most was Neelix, and the little blonde girl that hung out with
It was a good concept. It had, they wanted it, Next Generation a little bit, but certainly DS9 had a continuing story. The Dominion War kind of ran through this entire 7 seasons of DS9. With Voyager, they wanted to go back to those self-contained episodes if they could, the way they did in the original series. The original series, you can just watch any episode in any order. It doesn't matter because one doesn't really carry over to another. And plus, they wanted to go into a new place in space. So they had the Voyager crew go through a wormhole, and they're in the Delta Quadrant, which none of that's been explored. So you've got new alien races, new situations. You got a starship without the support of Starfleet. So it was a real interesting concept. And they had Catherine Janeway, so they had the first female captain that led a show. And they had a real interesting crew. They had Tuvok, who was a Vulcan, and but the show just didn't really click with fans, and a lot of the self-contained episodes was really hurting it. At some point, they brought in Jerry Ryan at 7 and 9, and she's a very attractive woman, and they put her in a very skimpy suit. But they were trying to help ratings, and it did. The show was better because of her.
It did.
And not just because of the skimpy suit. But probably my favorite Voyager episodes, and I do like Voyager, and it's apples and oranges. It's hard to compare, but there was an episode where somebody on the Voyager had killed somebody in engineering, and so they catch the guy, and Tuvok, the Vulcan, asked him why he did it, and he was like, "Meh, just did it." He's like, "Yeah, but what did he do to you? What was your motive?" He was like, "Really no motive, just felt like killing him." And so Tuvok, having a logical mind, was trying to get his grasp around why somebody would do that, and he just couldn't, and he couldn't sleep at night. He finally got to the point where he went down into the brig and he did a mind meld with the Psycho, trying to figure out why he had done it, what was his motive. But the fact is, he didn't have a motive. He just done it simply to do it.
Psycho.
Yeah, because he was psycho. So then that psychosis kind of went over to Tuvok for a while. And so he kind of lost it for a while. And so I thought that was a good storyline. And but all in all, Voyager was okay, but I didn't like it as much as DS9 and Next Gen. And then after that, they decided to do a prequel, which prequels wasn't overdone then. They're overdone now. So they went back before Kirk with the Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise. It was the first show to not have a composed thing. They had some song at the beginning of it. I forget what it was. Yeah, and Scott Bakula, my wife's a huge fan of his from Quantum Leap, and the acting on there was top notch. We're actually rewatching those now. She's watching them for the first time. She loves the show. Like I said, she's a Scott Bakula fan. It is well written, but it only lasted about 4 seasons. And to me, what I was hoping, I was a little disappointed by Enterprise because it was pre-Kirk. And so, like, Picard was a little more civilized than Kirk. And I was hoping to see, like, Enterprise, to be, maybe mankind hadn't evolved as much. They'd be having problems and conflicts and stuff, but they didn't really have that. But it was still a good show, and I can't really say which my favorite episode.
Well, I mean,
did you watch it at all, Enterprise?
No. But I mean, as far as conflict and stuff, you're also talking about, in general, this is considered kind of like a military institution, right?
Right.
So I mean, I'm sure that there are, even on the battleship Enterprise that we have today, there's, and we're way before them other guys. There's still order. There's still order. There's still ranks. There's everything still. So I can understand why it wasn't. I don't know what you were expecting.
Well, the show only lasted 4 seasons, and it would probably lasted longer because it was only getting better and better. But Les Moonves took over CBS, and Les Moonves hates science fiction. And when he took over, he'd done away with anything science fiction and didn't want to touch anything science fiction because he just didn't think that was something that you
Did
could
they have
sell.
Klingons in that show?
Yeah, they had them on occasion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What I liked about the show, they really delved into some of the races that you saw in the original series, but didn't know much about, like Tellarites. They look like pigs, and the Andorians with the antennas.
Oh, okay.
So they delved into that. Jeffrey Combs, he played several different characters throughout the different series, and he played an Andorian in this, and he's a fantastic actor. So I liked Enterprise. And so we went into movies from there. So you had the movie Generation where you had Picard meeting Kirk. Did you see that?
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
I thought they was just doing it, just to kind of feed fans.
Yeah. It was a fan service.
Yeah.
But it was still enjoyable. It was neat to see those two iconic characters finally meet. It was a passing of the torch from the original series over to Next Generation.
What torch was there to pass?
The Star Trek. You know, the movies.
Bernard had already been a captain for nearly 10 years.
Yeah, but the movies had all been original series, and now
Oh.
they're going to transition to Next
Oh, okay.
Generation. So I like Star Trek Generations, and but the next movie, that the Next Generation movie, which was called Star Trek First Contact, was fantastic. If you don't know anything about Star Trek, you'd enjoy Star Trek: The First Contact. It was directed by Jonathan Frakes, who plays number 1, Will Riker, and it was great. It was a great movie. Did you see that?
I think I've seen all the Star Trek movies.
Had the Borg Queen and them trying to convert data over.
Right.
And after that was Star Trek Insurrections. And Star Trek Insurrections was like a Star Trek Next Generation episode. Should never really been a movie. They took a premise that would have been good for an hour-long episode. They stretched it out to 2 hours. I'm not going to say it's horrible, but after coming off Star Trek First Contact,
Is that the one with the Romulan in it?
no, it was like a Fountain of Youth type thing, and it was pretty forgettable. Yeah, it was very good. The next one was what was the next one? What was it? Star Trek Nemesis. Oh
That's
my
the
gosh.
one with the Romulan in it.
Oh yeah. It had Tom Hardy in it to play the Mad Max, and you know that he actually started drinking and was like got into this deep dark depression after doing that because he was a huge Star Trek fan. It was like his big break, and that movie sucked so bad. It was bad. I mean, it was horrible. Even the cast knew it was bad, but it must be terrible to make a movie, and while you're making it, you know it sucks. I mean, you're getting your paycheck. That's
Right.
all well and good.
True, but it's kind of like I'm putting my name on this.
Right. It killed the franchise. I mean, there was no Star Trek after that. No Star Trek on television, no Star Trek movies. So for years and years and years, Nemesis had driven a nail in the coffin that was Star Trek. And so you begin to think that, okay, we're never going to have Star Trek again. Well, all of a sudden, all these streaming services come along. So the popularity of Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu. So everybody wants a piece of that pie. So CBS All Access are like, you know what? We're going to make our own streaming service. So what do we got to entice people? So they're digging through their toy box and they're like, hey, what about Star Trek?
Yeah.
So they come out with Star Trek Discovery, which is the most anti-Star Trek show that's ever been.
See, I don't even know that I know much about that at all.
It's filmed very dark. Everybody argues on the bridge. Nobody gets along. Humanity is horrible. Starfleet's horrible.
When is this supposed to be set in place?
It's actually set before
Enterprise?
Okay.
Or
Wait a minute. Or is it after Enterprise?
Well, that's
it's after Enterprise. After Enterprise, before Kirk. It's terrible. Horrible writing.
Well, isn't that the nitty gritty you was wanting?
Yeah, nitty gritty is okay, but like I said, just the way it's filmed, the way it was done, it was like if you did you're not a Star Trek fan.
No.
It's like if you did no research whatsoever,
Okay.
but decided to make a Star Trek movie or Star Trek series. Instead of having warp drive, they had spore drive. Instead of red alert, they had black alert. You know, you get the secret organization that was revealed in DS9 called Section 31. Section 31 has uniforms and badges. That's real secret. Look, I got my badge and my uniform, but shh, secret. It was retarded. It was terrible. So you're thinking, wow, CBS, and nobody watched it. CBS, you can track how many people watch on regular network television, but you really can't track how much watch on streaming season or on streaming services. So, yeah, nobody watched Discovery, and the people that did hated it. So they decided to try to redo stuff and try to make some Trek that people would like, and so they come out with Star Trek Picard.
Okay. Yeah, that's still on, right?
So they brought in Picard, first season, watched it, fantastic. A lot of people hated it. Some people hate just because that's their hobby. But Star Trek Picard was good. As being an older person,
Right.
you know, and Picard, Patrick Stewart just recently turned 80. You know, you're not at 80 what you were at 40. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
things change. So it's not the same character. He's grown. He's in a different part of his life. He's retired from Starfleet. He retired an admiral. So the situation comes up without spoiling it, and he has to deal with it. It has to deal with the Romulans. And
Those pesky Romulans.
yeah, those pesky. but Data, the character Data, had been killed in Star Trek Nemesis in a real stupid way. So they really they had Data kind of come back and give him another death scene in a way I can't describe, but it was really done well. It was really, really touching. In fact, Patrick Stewart.
Let's kill him off right this time.
Yeah, we're killing him off right. So Patrick Stewart actually choked up several times trying to say his lines. But if you're a Star Trek Next Generation fan, definitely see Star Trek Picard. There's a lot of hate online about it, but the fact is it's a great show. It's a great show. Wife watched Next Generation. My wife watched Picard, and she enjoyed that. And the reason I keep bringing her up is it's a different perspective. She was younger
Right.
than I am, a female perspective. So we both enjoyed it. So there's going to be a season 2, and they're working on that, and I'm excited for it. They're also working on Star Trek Lower Decks, which is another animated series. They had the original Star Trek animated series.
Right.
And now they're having a new animated series. It's done by the same people that do Rick and Morty.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to be real high volume comedy. And then they're coming out with, they brought in Christopher Pike. Remember you talked about
Right.
Pike in part 1 of our Star Trek video? Well, they've got a guy named Anson Mount who played Pike in Star Trek Discovery, and people hated Star Trek Discovery, but they loved Anson Mount as Pike. They're actually coming out with a Pike series called Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So I'm excited for that. So the future for Star Trek looks bright, and it's really the only thing CBS All Access has, to be honest with you. Some of their old shows and stuff, I mean, this is really their ace in their hand, so they really need to play it well. And so hopefully they will. But anything else?
You want to show off any of your stuff here?
Oh no. First of all, they're gonna. I've got some Playmates made some Star Trek Next Generation figures, and they're nice figures, and I don't mind them, but they don't have a lot of articulation. They get the knees bend, but the arms barely bend, and there's not an articulation with them. And Migo, who I'm a huge fan of, if you watched the last video, Migo is coming out with a Picard and a Data, and I'm really excited about that. And hopefully they'll do the entire crew, because you can just do these uniforms and really just resculpt heads, because
Right.
the uniforms are either
Use the same body.
yeah, wine color, gold color, or blue. So hopefully they'll come out with Worf and LaForge and Riker and all that. And they're more articulated, and so I hope Migo does that. And then, you know how I got the old Star Trek bridge?
Right.
I want them to make, I want Migo to make a Next Generation bridge, retro style.
I'm surprised somebody hasn't.
Yeah, well, if they don't, I'm going to.
Oh,
If
okay.
they don't, I'm going to make one. I'm going to buy an old Star Trek bridge and then take it apart and make it a Next Generation bridge.
Huh.
So hopefully they do that. So anyway, I know you're not a huge Star Trek fan the way I am, and but I appreciate you getting up and walking out.
No
I was here for the Doctor Who, so
Right. Well,
are you done?
I'd like to ask everybody to like, subscribe, comment,
Yes.
throw any questions at this old Trekkie.
Yeah.
See what you can.
Oh
see,
yeah.
see
There's
if you
something I want to
puzzle.
say. Something new I want to say.
What? What?
Really, first of all, I don't know if you noticed I'm dressed in
Yeah,
Starfleet
I
uniform.
know,
You noticed
yeah.
that? But really, Trekkies were the Star Trek conventions were the first people to do cosplay. People weren't doing cosplay. People didn't cosplay. People dressed up on Halloween, and that was it. So you'd have Comic Cons, but people really didn't dress up as their favorite characters. But when you went to a Star Trek convention, that's where I met a lot of the actors. They would dress up as the characters. So, really, Star Trek fans, Trekkies or Trekkers or whatever you want to say, they're the first ones to come up with cosplay in my mind. They kind of started it. So now it's really taken off. So now a lot of people cosplay. Now I'm done.
Thank you, Trekkie.
You done?
I think I'm done.
All right, live long and prosper, or make it so, or engage, or something like that. Yeah.